Emily used to believe in soulmates. For a long time, she thought she had found hers. Daniel wasn't just her husband. He was her best friend, her partner in every sense. They had met in college during a rainy day when he offered her his umbrella and stayed to talk, drenched and smiling. That tiny moment had blossomed into years of shared laughter, inside jokes, quiet coffee mornings, and late-night walks. Their marriage was the kind others envied. At least, that's what it looked like. They had a cozy home in the suburbs, 2 rescue cats, and matching coffee mugs they'd bought on a trip to Italy. Daniel worked in finance, structured, driven, predictable. Emily was a freelance illustrator, her days quieter, but filled with meaning. She worked from the sunlit corner of their home office, sometimes glancing at Daniel's framed photo on her desk and smiling without reason. Friends always said they were the perfect couple. At dinner parties, people would ask how they kept the spark alive after 10 years. Daniel would wink and say, "I married the right woman." And Emily believed him. She believed in every small gesture, every text he sent during the day just to say he missed her. But lately, something had shifted. It started with silence. Not the comforting kind they'd once shared, but something different. Daniel was quieter, distracted. He looked at her like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten. When she kissed him in the mornings, he no longer lingered. His phone, once left anywhere, was now always face down. He'd started working late, too, saying the team had a new project, deadlines were tighter. Emily noticed. She saw the change in the way he avoided her eyes during dinner. He laughed at shows they used to enjoy, but the laughter felt hollow. She tried not to panic. Marriage had seasons, she reminded herself. People went through phases. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he just needed space. Still, it lingered. That feeling in her gut. The uneasy stillness in the air when he walked into the room. But every time she thought about asking, about confronting, she told herself she was overthinking. He kissed her forehead before bed. He still remembered her coffee order. He hadn't stopped being kind. And that, in a way, made it harder. Because love doesn't disappear in an instant. It fades quietly, in the small spaces between what is said and what is felt. One night, as she folded laundry, Emily found a movie ticket in his pocket, something she had known he'd seen. She stared at it, confused. He'd told her he was at work that night. It wasn't proof of anything, but it made her chest tighten. She placed the ticket in her drawer, telling herself she'd ask tomorrow. But she didn't. She went to bed beside him, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how something so full could begin to feel so empty. And even then, she didn't see it coming. Not really. Emily didn't want to be the kind of person who checked their partner's phone. But doubt has a way of making you betray your own principles. It started with glances, her eyes flicking to his screen when it buzzed. Then came the late-night bathroom trips, his phone always clutched tightly in hand. She noticed the passwords had changed. That wasn't like Daniel. They used to have nothing to hide. He started dressing better for work. New cologne. New shirts. When she asked, he said he just wanted to look sharp for meetings. But she'd known him for a decade. He was never someone who cared much for appearances unless it was for something or someone. The more she noticed, the more it added up. His mood shifted too. He became irritable over small things. He forgot dates, her gallery showcase, their anniversary dinner. When she brought it up, he apologized, said he was just tired, overwhelmed. She wanted to believe that.
She needed to.
But lies always have a pattern, and she was beginning to see it. One evening, Rachel came over with wine, and that look, the one friends get when they know something but are afraid to say it. Emily pressed, gently at first, then with urgency. Rachel hesitated before finally saying she'd seen Daniel at a cafe downtown. Not alone. A woman was with him. It could have been work-related, she said quickly. But Emily already knew it wasn't. The woman Rachel described didn't match anyone from Daniel's office. Younger. Stylish. Her laughter, Rachel said, had been too familiar. They sat on the same side of the table. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her mind spun with possibilities, memories, conversations she began replaying under a different light. The excuses, the absences, the coldness. She wasn't imagining it. She felt sick, physically ill. The man who used to hold her through anxiety attacks was now the source of her unrest. Still, she didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she started watching more closely. She checked credit card statements, tracked his locations loosely through shared apps. He'd turned off location sharing last month. He said it was for privacy, but they'd never needed it before. Her heart broke in pieces, not all at once. Every new detail was another cut. An extra dinner receipt. A late meeting that didn't exist. A voicemail he deleted before she could hear. She was drowning in suspicion, and yet she couldn't bring herself to scream. She loved him. Even in her pain, that truth clung to her. The hardest part wasn't the lies, it was how easily he told them. With the same voice he used to say, "I love you." Emily began to realize that love and betrayal could wear the same face, speak the same words, exist in the same breath. What frightened her most wasn't the possibility he had cheated. It was the feeling that he already had, and the person she once knew didn't exist anymore. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon, unmarked, from a number she didn't recognize. Just 8 words. "He's not who you think he is." Emily stared at it, heart racing, unsure whether to laugh or cry. It felt like confirmation and collapse at the same time. She didn't reply. Instead, she took a breath and opened a folder she'd kept hidden on her laptop, a folder of quiet doubts, the ticket stub, receipts, the photos Rachel had taken. She had wanted to believe she was wrong. Now, she wasn't so sure. That night, Daniel said he had a dinner meeting. Emily nodded, pretending. She waited an hour, then left. She already knew where to go. A hotel just outside downtown. She sat in her car across the street and watched. It didn't take long. Daniel arrived. He wasn't alone. She watched as he opened the door for the woman, laughing. The same laugh he used to give only to her. The woman reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream. She took a single photo, one moment, frozen in time, and drove home in silence. Her hands shook on the wheel. Her mind was empty and full all at once. There was no room for denial now. The truth had stepped out of the shadows. When Daniel walked in later that night, he looked normal. Casual. A little tired. She watched him lie with ease. Asked how the dinner went. He gave a name. Said it was all business. She handed him the photo without a word. The color drained from his face. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Just whispered, "I'm sorry." She asked how long. 6 months. She asked if he loved her. He didn't answer. Not right away. Daniel said he was confused, said things hadn't been right between them for a while. He missed feeling seen. He missed feeling wanted. Emily didn't scream. She just listened. And each word felt like a knife, slow and deliberate. She realized he'd made the choice long before the first lie. It didn't happen by accident. He had chosen someone else in moments where he could have chosen her. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was how easily he had erased her. How he'd smiled at her each day while living a double life. She asked if it meant anything to him. Everything they'd built. He said it did, but the words rang hollow. If it had meant anything, he wouldn't have destroyed it. Emily stood in the doorway, staring at the man she thought she knew. The man who had once promised forever. And for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not as her husband, not as her partner, but as someone she didn't recognize. She didn't ask him to leave. She didn't ask him to stay. She just walked past him, slowly, as if letting go of a version of herself that no longer existed. And as she closed the bedroom door behind her, she knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emily didn't fall apart. Not publicly. She disappeared from the routine she used to love, left the home they built together, and moved into the spare room at Rachel's apartment. For days, she barely spoke. She ate because she had to. She answered messages with short replies. Her world had stopped, but everything else moved on without her. Therapy became a lifeline. Not because she wanted to understand him, but because she needed to understand herself. How she'd ignored the signs. How she'd convinced herself that love was enough. The truth was brutal, but it was honest. She had loved someone who stopped loving her the moment it became inconvenient. And now, she had to unlearn years of trust built on something that hadn't been real for a long time. Daniel tried. He called, texted, emailed. He sent flowers, wrote long letters talking about regret and mistakes. He said he'd ended the affair, that he didn't want to lose her, that he was willing to go to therapy, that he still loved her. Maybe he did in some way, but the damage was already done. The weight of betrayal doesn't lift with apologies. It settles into the bones. They met once at her request, not to reconcile, but for closure. He looked tired, older, regretful. She asked the questions she needed to. Did he ever think of telling her?
No.
Did he love the other woman? He didn't know. Would he have stopped if he hadn't been caught? Probably not. And in those answers, she found clarity. He cried. She didn't. Forgiveness came quietly, not for him, but for herself. For the nights she blamed her intuition. For the mornings she tried harder instead of walking away. For every time she accepted less than she deserved. She forgave herself for believing him. She started painting again. Not for clients or commissions, but for herself. The canvases were heavy with emotion, abstract, messy, raw.
Her work changed. So did she.
She began sleeping through the night, smiling at strangers, making plans for weekends instead of waiting for someone else to make them with her. People asked what happened. She didn't tell the full story. Not out of shame, but because pain didn't need to be retold to be real. She wasn't interested in being pitted. She was rebuilding, piece by piece, quietly, and without fanfare. In time, she found peace. Not in forgetting, but in accepting. He was part of her story, but he wouldn't be the ending. She no longer needed answers from him. She no longer wanted to fix what he had broken. She kept one photo of them, not because she missed him, but to remember what blind trust looked like. And to remind herself how far she'd come. That night changed everything. It shattered illusions and tore through comfort. But it also forced a rebirth. She didn't lose herself. She found the version that had been buried beneath compromise and silence. And when she finally stood in her own space, alone but whole, she understood. Some endings are beginnings in disguise.